So let's start. So I'm going to grab our little handy dandy handout. If you didn't grab one of these, come fetch one. So let's first define emotional intelligence. Okay? So emotional intelligence is different than IQ. Right? Emotional intelligence it's a very, very fancy word that Daniel Goleman, I will give him credit, that Daniel Goleman created, sort of, kind of, not really, psychologists, we call it emotional regulation. But at the end of the day, it's the ability to feel an emotion, tolerate an emotion, and recuperate from an emotion, right? And most of us in the world, what we do really, really well is feel it, and then we immediately want to go to recuperating. But very few of us tolerate it, right? So it's the end of the day, you just put them to bed, you're totally frustrated, and you feel guilty because you're questioning why you are a parent, and you're like, I should be grateful. I went and got all those hormones, so those of you that did IVF, and you feel guilty, and instead of sitting in those feelings, you go and serve yourself some wine, or you eat a piece of Entenmann's cake, or you fight with your partner, right? About something ridiculous like, why did you put the eggs there? That's usually the female version of it, but or you just sit and watch ridiculous television for the rest of the night and numb out. That is not emotional intelligence, right? That's skipping tolerating, right? So to have emotional intelligence, the emotion is natural. Feeling frustrated that your child won't sleep for the 185th time. Feeling frustrated that your child hit you when you're trying to brush their teeth is human and normal, right? And in that moment, if you're emotionally intelligent, you tell yourself, I'm so frustrated, right? And when you label it, you're able to tolerate it, because now you have to get into, okay, let me have this emotion pass through me. You don't have to fix the child that's tantruming. I just told you that 3-year-olds tantrum 3 times per hour. And when you pull them away from pleasure and go brush their teeth, the natural human response for the toddler or the preschooler or the infant is to hate you for it. Right? Because they really don't get why you keep making them sleep. Right? And some of you haven't told them why we go to sleep. Right? Because you've been told that you make children do something. But we have to tell them at least 85 times for 3 weeks, we sleep because it makes our brain healthy. And it helps us be healthy. And then they're going to be like, I don't care, because I just want to snuggle with you. Right? But if you repeat the why, when they're 4 and 5, they go, I sleep because I'm healthy, but I don't like it. I don't like it sleep, but I sleep because it's healthy. Like if a little tiny person in the classroom tells me, I sleep because it's healthy, I don't like it, I'm going to be like, wow, that's awesome. Their parent told them exactly why they do it, because guess what? That's a life skill. There's a lot of things that we have to do that we don't like, and we have to tolerate frustration, right? So all of you, when you're brushing your children's teeth, or you're putting them to bed, or you're getting up out of your bed and walking them to their bed for the 4th time, right, have to tolerate frustration. If you put them in your bed and you haven't decided that co-sleeping is part of your parenting plan, you're not having an emotionally intelligent moment. You're just like, oh my God, I can't deal with my frustration. Right? And in that moment, why can't you deal with your frustration? Because you're having a physical response to the trigger of your frustration. I am sleep deprived. I have a ginormous meeting at work tomorrow. Who cares? I'm just going to put this little tiny body in my bed. It's warm and cute anyway. F it. right? Does that make sense? So, as you've noticed, I do a lot of back and forth between you and your child in explaining this because you're both human. And you're both experiencing the same exact human, emotional, and physical responses, but your children have zero information on how to manage it. Okay, so emotional intelligence, I defined it. You kind of get it, yes? Any questions? Pretty good? Okay, so 2. How do we learn emotional intelligence? So I told you that emotional intelligence is being able to feel an emotion, right? And when we feel an emotion, we have to be able to label it. If a human being can say, I am fill in the blank of the emotion, your action and response to it will lessen. In young children, the tantrum will decrease, with some positive percentages. I don't know the exact percentage. Some people say it's 50%, some people say it's 40%, but who cares? Like, what I want, the goal for preschool children as it pertains to emotional intelligence is for them to look at you and go, I am frustrated, or I'm sad, I'm angry with you, mommy, right? Because when they do that, they are actually giving you what they're feeling using their words, right? Instead of showing you how they're feeling. So those of you that have children 3 and under, right? Your babies are showing you how they're feeling because emotion is a physical response. It's many things. It's like mixed together. A neurologist would punch me in the face for what I just said because I simplified it. But at the end of the day, emotion it just happens. It just bubbles up, right? And what we do with it, how we manage it, is our intelligence around it, right? So the way to learn how to feel an emotion is by naming it, right? And by you labeling it. And what do I mean by that, right? All of you feel perfectly comfortable grabbing an apple and saying, apple, manzana, roja, mira, right? And then your child is falling apart, super sad and angry, and all of you at some point have gone, what's wrong? What's the matter? They don't know. Because at that moment, your child is only feeling the physical responses, right? And the discomfort of an emotion. So just like you told them that it's an apple, you have to tell them, estás triste porque quieres el teléfono de mami. You're sad because you want mommy's phone, but I'm not going to give you the phone, right? And then your child screams bloody murder and arches their back and comes at you to try to grab your phone. This is your opportunity for the second piece of emotional intelligence, which is to tolerate the emotion, right? Your child has to sit in that frustration. Lena, when do we just let them sit in sadness? From like a year on, right? From the moment that if you grab your phone and you put it under your behind, and your child comes looking for it under your behind, right? That means they have object permanence, meaning that they know and they remember and their memory tells them and they're paying attention. From the moment you can no longer hide something from your child, that is the moment that you start letting them tolerate. All of you tell me, Lena, what is the consequence, right? And with children under 5, the consequence is I can't play with that phone anymore. That's it. You're done. You don't have to take away Daniel Tiger later. You don't have to make them feel bad about it. They're already feeling bad, right? So in that moment, when you put the phone down here, you remember, I am teaching them emotional intelligence. Now they need to tolerate sadness. Because if we go, no, papito, mira, and then you're like, you start like doing things to make them feel better, right? That's when you are rewarding, right? But if you let them sit in the emotion, most children under 5 will have approximately anywhere between 9 and 20 minutes. It's long. That's why when I started, I told you, you guys have to tolerate what happens to your emotional state when your child is freaking out, right? So it'll take 9 to 20 minutes to be like, ah! They're hitting you. It's fine. They're hitting. In that moment, the brain is roaming, like your phone. If you talk in that moment, your child cannot listen to you because they're overstimulated with the emotion, right? And then in that moment, I want all of you to go to your own emotional intelligence and be like, this makes me scared. This makes me want to smack my kid. This makes me remember all the times that my mother smacked me, right? But in that moment, your child is practicing sadness, frustration, disappointment in an uncensored way. Because we got to 30, 40, 50 by learning how to censor and edit our emotions, right? So most typical children that there's nothing else happening and you haven't said anything, you just said you're very, very sad, you wanted mommy's phone, but we're not going to have mommy's phone. And you put the phone away, right? Then the child has to tolerate the sadness. You have to tolerate your frustration, your guilt, your sadness, and don't do anything else to the child. Just start breathing and calm yourself down. Why? Most children under 4 co-regulate, meaning that they use your nervous system to calm themselves down, right? All of you did that when they were babies, like you picked them up and you every time they cried, you held them, and they use that touch for you to calm down. Children do that for a while. It just doesn't look as obvious as when we hold our baby, right? So if your child is freaking out, right, about not having the phone, and I'll give you, at the end, I'll tell you what the American Pediatric Association says about cell phones and screens. You won't like it. So when they look to you to calm down, and if you're like, pero te he dicho 10 veces, and they need you to calm down, are they going to calm down? Or if you're like, okay, no, it's okay, are they going to calm down? Right? So that's why I want you, while they are screaming, to do your best to bring yourself to a almost flat and healthy state. So that when they look at you, now they can co-regulate and they can tolerate, right? Because what is emotional intelligence? The ability to feel an emotion by naming and labeling, to tolerate an emotion by sitting in it and not jumping to action, and then to recuperate from it. So most of your babies recuperate from their emotion by doing this. And this is when all of you get like deers in headlights and you're like, if I hold him, I will reward the behavior. And that's not good. I am going to lift that from all of you, and I'm going to let you know that no, you reward the behavior when you distract them and hand them something else when they're freaking out about the phone. When you hold them after you've let them lose their mind for 9 to 20 minutes, right? You are helping them regulate, and now you are dealing with emotion. When they fall apart, that is not behavior. They're sad, uncensored, unedited sadness. And sad is not bad. And frustrated is not disrespectful. And disappointed is not traumatic. You're loving parents. And that's why you don't want them to have hard feelings. That's why you imagine that you have to save them from hard feelings. Nobody over 9 months will die from sadness, frustration, or disappointment. A 4-month-old, you do hold. A 6-month-old, you do hold. a 9-month-old, start frustrating them, right? But why this is so difficult to do is that when your children are falling apart, you are also overstimulated by emotion. And all of you need to take your temperature about how you manage emotion. If you were raised in a stressful home and you were told that being angry or sad was, ay, eso no es bonito. That's the Colombian version. Ay, no, eso no es bonito, eso no se hace. I'm Colombian, so I can do that. Right? You were told that sadness and disappointment and frustration is bad. There are no bad feelings at all. None. Right? There's just hard feelings to feel and easy feelings to feel. Okay? And then the other thing is, if you are an anxious person and you have dealt with anxiety and maybe you have gone to a therapist and they have walked you through anxiety, parenting will trigger your anxious responses. So if you're lucky enough to be parenting with a partner or a caregiver that helps you, when you are flooded, it's physical. So if you had dealt with anxiety before you had children and you kind of nipped it in the bud, but now you find yourself freezing when your child has a tantrum, my recommendation is for you to seek assistance. Your child will continue to flood you, and you are going to make the mistake of either becoming too permissive so that you don't have to deal with the frustration and the anxiety that it creates inside of you, or you're going to become really punitive and you're going to want to stop it because you yourself are getting flooded and your anxiety is getting picked up. So if that is the case, please seek a mental health professional who can walk you through this transitional time, because your child is going to tantrum no matter what you do because they are practicing how to feel. Any questions about that piece? Because that's a serious one that I just said.
I have a quick question. You keep mentioning this applies to 4-year-olds or under. What happens between 4 and 5? Like there are children in that space, and is it the change is labeling because now they're labeling it? Or what's there?
Well, the statistic is varied, but like 40% of them are still tantruming when between with 4 and up, and they will continue to tantrum, just not 3 times an hour, right? But why it's horrible at 4 is that now the 3-year-old has some problem-solving skills and some language, but if your 4-year-old is developing in a normative way, their debate skills are fabulous and their problem-solving skills are fabulous, right? And know that your baby is just problem-solving how not to go to bed. They're not doing anything to you. Their goal is, I was just watching Daniel Tiger, and I was snuggling with you, and now you're gonna put me in that scary place that when you turn off the lights, I feel like my skin tingle, and I'm not 100% what's underneath the bed, and you tell me that I'm safe, but then sometimes we fight when I can't sleep. So now my brain is telling me that sleep is not good because me and my parents fight every time I go to sleep. Because that's the other thing that is also happening. The brain is a prediction machine. That's all it is. It uses past information to predict future information. So, if your child is 4 or 5 and they have a sleeping issue, I'm saying it in quotations because, right? Part of it is because their brain remembers all the times that you have lost your cookies and you have screamed at them, right? And by the way, as a parenting educator and a child development expert, I know you're going to scream. I scream. I have 2 kids. They're 14 and 11. I've probably screamed 1,000 times in their lifetime, right? It's what you do after you scream. And then that's an emotional intelligence moment, right? Because I have to say to them, I was feeling frustrated. So I'm feeling the feeling and labeling it, right? And then I have to say to them, you know what? And I didn't tolerate it because I didn't stop. I didn't breathe. I didn't calm down before I spoke to you. And then I'm going to teach them while I'm saying this, amendment to them, right? I'm amending it, not apologizing or saying sorry, right? And then I say to them, and next time I'm going to stop, I'm going to breathe before we continue speaking. So it's not the scream that hurts your child. It's the scream when you're telling them, you're making me feel frustrated because you're not listening. No, they're not. You are frustrated. You are not tolerating the frustration. And you are not recuperating from the frustration. Your child is just being a preschooler. I don't eat funny looking things. I want to sleep with mommy and daddy. And I want to play most of the time. And you are teaching them the self-agency of self-care. All of you woke up this morning and you debated in your head how many self-care things you were not going to do so you can get to the ladies' parenting talk. All of you at night on the couch are wondering, do I really need to take off my contact lenses? Do I really need to brush my teeth? I'll brush it in the morning, right? That is what your child is also doing when you're stopping them and their pleasure to go brush their teeth and to go to bed, and they're having an emotional response. Now, why is emotional intelligence so important? So I'll take you back to your little handout. If you didn't get a handout, raise your hand and we'll get it to you. Okay, so emotional intelligence, when mastered, we are able to have self-awareness. Right? So being able to say, I'm really frustrated with this project that my boss is making me do, gives you self-awareness. And when you know that, then you can calm yourself down, and then you could be motivated and be empathic. Okay? All of you want your children to be kind. Right? All of you want your children to excel and be ready for kindergarten. Right? And you're driving your teachers crazy because they're not teaching them enough letters and they're not teaching them enough numbers. And then, why isn't my child doing what they're doing at the pre-K4 at Southside Elementary? You're all worried about this, right? Don't worry about it. Worry about whether your child can label an emotion, take a moment, calm down, and find a way to feel better. Because in kindergarten, especially if they go to a public school, nobody's going to hold them about that. They're going to want them to be able to do that. Not 100% of the time, because kindergarten teachers know that they need to help babies, right? But most of the time. So it doesn't matter if I know all the states and all my colors, if I don't know how to handle sadness and frustration. It doesn't matter. Think about it. When you have had a fight with a loved one and you try to write an email, can you? You can, but it's not as good as when you're calm, right? So why is emotional intelligence so important? Why do I love this preschool? For those of you on Facebook, it's United Way Center for Excellence. Because that is exactly what they're doing in the school, right? There's areas for your children and they know that they can go there to calm down, to take a moment, right? They know that their teacher is not going to tell them, you're being mean, when they're actually being sad or frustrated. They're walking them through those emotions. And you guys did an excellent job, pat your bag, for choosing the school, right? Because social emotional learning creates good academics, right? So that's why for some of you who your emotional intelligence is not at 100%, you have a really hard time being motivated. Because if you are avoiding feeling sad, right, or being disappointed, you may not go in and ask your boss for a raise because you are imagining that you can't tolerate the sadness and the frustration and the disappointment if your boss tells you, I'm sorry, we're cutting actually salary, so I was going to talk to you and tell you that we needed to cut some of your benefits. But if you have emotional intelligence, you are willing to risk feeling sad and frustrated. This is what, like, you're all thinking about the under 5-year-olds, but I also want you to think about what is that going to look like at 32? Right? So when you say no, when you set boundaries, and you have consistency in your routine, you are actually helping your child flex the muscle of sadness and disappointment and frustration, because at 32, I need to be able to tolerate sadness, disappointment, and frustration to become an entrepreneur, to write a dissertation, to ask for a raise. If you cannot tolerate sadness, disappointment, and frustration, if you are avoidant of conflict, it's very hard to succeed. Okay, so in your little handout, I wrote it like really nicely. It's like, what are the reasons for emotional intelligence? This is why I like to do it live. I get a little more into the brain. Okay, so I've already kind of spoken about this. Wow, I've done a really good job today. Like, Nina's back. Okay, so in the next, yeah.
What happens if you don't have a tantrum? You just have a misbehavior. For example, playing with the food, and again, and you say, okay, just stop because, for example, if you're doing the food to the floor. So what is the best reaction?
So your child is between 1 and 2?
2 and 3.
Between 2 and 3. Okay, so playing with food is a fine motor and problem-solving activity. Right? So a lot of 2-year-olds less 3-year-olds will play with their food. So I'm thinking that you also have a picky eater, and you also have a power struggle while eating. So this is not part of this talk, but it will help your child practice emotional intelligence, and you as well. Ellen Satter, ELLYN SATTER. Google that, right? It's a great organization helping parents not create disordered eating. Okay? Eating is very important. It's part of how we regulate our body. But there's a contract between parent and child. And all of you are going to want to punch me in the face with what I'm about to say. So I'm getting ready for all of your hatred. The contract between parent and child as it pertains to food, and yes, this is sort of an emotional intelligence moment, is parents say what we eat, when we eat it, and where we eat it. Children say how much they eat and if they eat. Who's Cuban in here? You all lost your mind. You're like, no, el niño tiene que comer, hay que darle un tetero. Por favor, ¿cómo tú puedes decir eso? Right? That's the Cuban. I'm not Cuban, but I'm married to a Cuban, so I can do that. So the Colombians were like, ay, no, tranquila, porque se va a poner gordita, entonces no importa que no coma. Because we're all so beautiful. Those of you that don't speak Spanish, in Colombia, we worry about weight. And the Cuban community will give a bottle to a baby till they're like 6 years old to make sure that there's food in their tummy. Right? It's a stereotype, but a lot of people do it. So, okay, so in the what, when, where of food, right? The when is the most important. Most of us need to offer a child something every 2.5 to 3 hours. Don't give them anything in between. You guys are nervous. Your baby didn't eat breakfast. So an hour later, when they ask you for food because they're biologically hungry, you give them a snack. But then your little baby becomes a little, hummingbird, like constantly like eating something throughout the day, right? So that's why they're not eating at lunch. They're snacking their way through the day.
What happens if he's eating but playing?
When he's eating and playing, you could tell him, baby, you really want to play, but we can't throw the food on the ground. So let's play with this, right? You can give him an option, right? Because sometimes we redirect, but we have to replace. We have to replace what he's trying to master, which is kind of like picking it up and throwing it. Also, if you have been, here's the thing about 2 and 3-year-olds, right? Toddlers are scientists, right? So when he throws his food, if you're like, ¡ay! ¿Pero por qué estás tirando? Your scientist child is like, wait, I can make her do that big startling sound that made me startle? Let me see if it happens again. ¡Ay! ¿Pero te he dicho 3 veces? Because have you noticed that children love to play games where something happens? Cause and effect toys are children's number one tool. So, mommy, the next time he throws it, you just have to say as flat as, take a deep breath. Javiercito, la comida no se tira. And then you pick it up, and then respond like that every single time. If you have 2 or 3-year-olds, even if you startle them, like the startle is like, oh, that's fascinating. What just happened to my body? And they'll repeat it until they master it. That's why they read the book 100 times. That's why they want to watch the same movie. Like, I'm old. I have older children. So, like, back in the day, my little guy who came to this school, my 11-year-old was in this school. And I will forever thank Miss Syra. Miss Syra, if you're watching, I love you. He was like the ultimate scientist, right? And he still is. Like, he's wondering about cancer cells today. So, we have to be mindful of how we respond, right, to them. And you can have a 1, 2, 3, right? You can let him know this is time to eat, it's not time to play. Or you can prevent it, and then just like the 3rd time, just like take the plate and say, you're showing me that you're having a hard time, so I'm going to help you. But like this. And emotional intelligence wise, in the chair or at the table, say, when you take the plate. And then you're going to remember what I just said. You're going to breathe and you're going to calm yourself down, because when they look at you again, right, then they will, but 9 to 20 minutes. I'm not telling you something easy. For some of you, screaming works because it's fast food parenting.
I'm going to say the word that you probably hate it, timeout. So I have 2 girls that when they're eating in front of each other, they sometimes start chatting, and then they leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they get distracted,
Mm-hmm.
and I try like telling them several times, it's time to eat. 30 minutes later, they're still there. And so I want to time out. Or I just tell them, you're not eating at all, then you're going to feel hungry, there's no more food.
Mm-hmm.
It works. Is that true? Or is it not? Or is there
Okay, so timeout is really controversial in the child development world, and as it pertains to emotional intelligence, right? Because for some children, timeout, they don't understand it. They don't have the cognition. Now, you told me that you have 4 and 5-year-olds, right?
Well, they're twins, they're 4.
They're 4. So, the wrong way to do timeout is this way. You're not listening, so we're going to go to timeout. Right? Because now you've just punished them, and the punishment that you're giving them is abandoning them and putting them in a corner alone. So they do experience that as being rejected and abandoned, right? If you are using, I'd rather you call it a time to think, a time to calm down, a time to wonder. But in the example that you just gave me, that they're having food together and they're talking and they're laughing, I'm going to say something to you. Part of eating is social. And your message to them is, that's wrong. And I want to wonder with you if that's what you want them to hear. Right? Because my recommendation to you, and you have to, the thing is that you want it to work the first time. And with young children, anybody under 5, if you haven't said the same thing consistently for at least 3 weeks without changing it up, you're not showing them the rule. You're not teaching them anything. They have to hear it more than once. And they have to hear the same thing consistently more than once. So let's go back to this idea of emotional intelligence, right? Guys, label the emotion. It makes you really happy to talk when we're eating. And it makes mommy happy too. But we have to eat and take bites. Right? And then they're going to feel frustrated. Because they're not eating because they're having fun. And again, children don't know why they eat. They don't know why they sleep. They don't know why you want them to go poo in the potty. It's like, I'm cool. Like, why do you want me to stop playing to go poo in the potty? You're like ridiculous, right? So we have to tell them it is good to have a conversation when we are eating, but we have to give fuel to our body. Fuel to our body, they're at the school. So they're going to wonder with you, what does that mean, mommy, right? And again, going back to the conversation about emotional intelligence, I know you're really happy, label it, but it's time to eat. And now you're really sad because all you want to do is talk and have fun, and mommy made you sad by reminding you to eat. And then let them, and then maybe do something fun, like 2 bites and then talk. 3 bites and then talk. Young children like pattern, right? So in that scenario, I wouldn't do timeout. I recommend not doing timeout because as it pertains to emotional intelligence, pulling them aside when they're having a big behavioral interruption, right, is teaching them that they get abandoned when they feel frustrated. It's teaching them that they get abandoned when they get sad. But can we tell them, you know what? I think we both need to cool off. Let's take a moment, create like a soft little space. Guess what? They have it here at school, so you can kind of back it up. And sometimes you don't have to pull them aside. You just have to go, let's just cool it off. And leave them exactly where they're at. Now, statistically, we know if you need to go, please go. I know some of you have to get to work. Statistically, we know that parents in public are stricter than at home. And that's just human nature because you are worried about judgment around you. Right? And it makes you really uncomfortable, so you act stricter or meaner. And this is why your children act out in public, because some of you get meaner, but some of you get permissive. And you're not consistent. Right? So as it pertains to emotional intelligence, when you're in a public setting, if you know that you're the type of person that you get embarrassed when your child falls apart at Target, right? Pick them up, let them hit you in the head, go to the car, turn on the air conditioning, lock the doors, and then do the 9 to 20 minutes of tolerating emotion in the car. Okay? Predict for them before you get to Target that you know that it makes them very happy when you buy them a toy at Target, but today we're getting Bounty. That doesn't mean that they're not going to ask you for the toy, but it means that you've predicted for them. Also, your child does not need a toy every single time you go to Target. You're giving them a toy every single time you go to Target because of your own emotional intelligence or lack thereof. You're afraid that they're going to make a scene, so you promise them a toy. So guess what? They're so materialistic. No, that's the consistency. Target equals dollar section toy. They're not dumb. Hell yeah, I want a toy. So be mindful of that. And being at Target, not getting a toy, and being disappointed one more time is emotional intelligence. So in your handouts that I gave you, tonight or tomorrow or the next day, read this next section. right? Because I've actually verbalized this, but here it's kind of broken down for you, right? So first, we label. Second, we help them tolerate, which is the hardest part for every single person in this room. Because when your child is losing their mind for 9 to 20 minutes, you are too. So stop concentrating on their child while they're losing their mind. You've already labeled it. I've already told you that it doesn't hurt them, right? Calm yourself down so when they look at you for comfort, you're ready to comfort, right? And then in the embrace is the recuperation, which is the last part of the handout, right? That is when you talk. Baby, I told you, we don't always get toys at Target. Baby, I told you, we don't throw food off our plate. We can play with other things. Baby, I told you, we're fueling our bodies. And I know you love to talk with your sister, but we have to eat and talk. Right? So when they come to you and like, see, all of you are saying that when they're losing their mind. And both of you are like, but like, if I start talking to you like this, a little one just looked over and was like, what in the world is that lady doing? So can you calm down? Can you hear the message of calm or not at all? The question was, when's the best time to do timeout? I really don't recommend it. You guys can't do it calmly. And that follows a really bad pattern that you have been sold by society. This idea that I have to feel bad to follow a rule. You don't have to feel bad to follow a rule. You just have to consistently hear the rule and the reason for the rule. And then intrinsically, from inside of me, I will want to follow the rule. Because when you when you scream, when you spank, when you do a punitive timeout, it works for most children. There's one child that it won't work for, the leader. The leader child will give you the middle finger, just as much as you're giving them the middle finger. Right? Everybody talks about grit and resilience and how we need to make children resilient. Guess what? That little person that screams back at you when you're screaming at them, that's what grit looks like. Are you sure you want grit? Right? I do. I want your child to be resilient, because the children that follow you immediately when you scream and hit them, they are not following the rule because they understand that we don't throw food on the ground because food is for fueling our body. They're following your rule because they're afraid to lose your love. They're afraid to lose your connection, and they can no longer trust you. And at 32, because all of you are thinking, I was hit, I was screamed at, I'm fine. I'm going to ask you this question. When you really want to do something, do you question yourself whether it's the right thing? Do you wonder what everybody else is going to think about your choice? Do you get lost in wondering everybody else's opinion around your decision? That is the consequence of being screamed at, being hit, and being told, I know more than you what you need, without giving somebody a why. You are teaching your children why they sleep, why they eat, why they go pee and poo in the potty, right? Because that's what you guys are dealing with, right? Like with my daughter, I'm like, Camila, I know everybody's watching pornography, but it's not necessary for you. Don't think about that. But the average American child is exposed to pornography by 11. That's a sex talk. My friend Gabriela Galvan does that. Go to her talk. So, timeout is, it's more like, let's take a moment to cool off. Let's cool off. Mommy's going to cool off, and you are going to cool off. Because in that moment, what I just told you, label an emotion, tolerate an emotion, recuperate from an emotion. Everybody needs those 9 to 20 minutes to cool off. All of you are going to need to sit in your car and tolerate all the feelings that I just made you feel. Okay, so the question for you guys over here, if you didn't hear him, is what happens when you're co-parenting? What happens if you've separated from your partner or there are two separate households? Okay, in my perfect child development psychology world, there are 3 musts to parenting. Whether you are co-parenting or whether you're not co-parenting, which is consistency in how you respond, routine, and teamwork. So what you are describing is the teamwork amongst all the caregivers, right? So in a perfect world, and the world is not perfect, everybody taking care of the children, abuela, tia, your ex, the person you made a baby with, because there's different versions of families today, right? Everybody would be on the same page. Now, usually when it's a divorce, the reason for divorcing is because we don't trust our partners anymore. Like that's the number one reason. We can't trust them, right? So you're probably not communicating. So in that instance, if you're not truly communicating, it's going to be harder because your child has a plan A and plan B. And if the other person is Santa Claus in Disney World most of the time and they're being permissive. And by the way, when you have a co-parenting thing, please don't villainize the Santa Claus person. They're usually the person that sees the child less. And when they're with their baby, they feel super guilty. And that's why they give in to them and make it only pleasurable. Because they're telling themselves that if I'm fighting with my baby on the 4 days that I have them, then I'm losing. It's a bad myth. They're hurting their child, right? But that's why that person is doing it. And I know it's really hard to see the person that you separated from a soft lens. But that's why there's a Santa Claus partner in co-parenting moments. And there's a I'm going to save my child person in the divorce situation, right? So know that it will be harder and the tantrums will last longer, but if in your home you consistently respond in the same way and the routine is set and you're managing their emotional intelligence, for those that are lucky enough that everybody on the team is on the same page, it will work faster. For you, instead of 3 weeks, it might take 3 months because children have plan A, plan B, and they're not flexing that muscle in both homes. But stay consistent if you're in a co-parenting situation, because in the long term, your consistency and routine creates safety. Santa Claus and Disney World permissive parents are not safe because sometimes they get frustrated that they have to keep giving and they explode. So then what ends up happening is that the child can't trust what is happening with that other parent and it's not safe. I'll end with this because I've given you a lot of information, and please refer back to the handout. I know how your brains work. If you read this later, what I said will make sense. Okay? And hold on, if you need it in Spanish, I will do my part to send it to Maria so that she can send you the handouts in Spanish. And she will know who to send that to, or don't bother her too much, bother her on Monday. So the routine to all of you feels like a task and not fun. Bath time, bedtime, dinner. Your adult emotional experience of that task, it's tedious and it's boring and it's frustrating. But for your children, those are circles of love. When you bathe them and you smile at them and you dump water on their head and you're laughing, that's a circle of love. When you hold their hand and you pat their back while they're going to sleep, that's a circle of love. When you pick them up at school and you walk them to the parking lot and you put them in their car seat, that's a circle of love. Don't lose the opportunities. It's not, in your adult head, it's a task. In their baby child world, it's love. Because when you are doing those things that are incredible, and listen, I will be the first one to tell you, like, my place is called Stop Parenting Alone, not I Fix Your Child. The children just happen to come with you. I'm here for you, right? I know that wiping the butt for the 384th time while they're wiggling around, you want to shoot your head, right? But please, at night, when you've had a bad moment, be gentle with yourself. You're human. But also say, tomorrow, I'm going to make all these circles of tasks loving, emotional, intelligent circles. Okay? Now, I'm going to stop so those that want to leave can leave. But I have to pack up. So those of you that have questions, come to me and I'll answer your questions. Now, if I've made a big mess of your life and you have more questions and answers, okay? StopParentingAlone.com is the website. Follow us on social media, because if you were following me, you might be able to see me live, right? Like the people that follow me now on Facebook. Read the blogs, right? Join our online parenting subscription, but all of it is there. Or come for a one-on-one with me or one of our therapists. Okay? So thank you, and thank you for being here this morning.